you, BT? Skyling as usual.
Get stuffed, you fat Scottish twig.
Hello everyone, and today we're going to be reviewing Call of Duty 3 as part of our Call of Duty 20th anniversary celebration, I guess. I don't know if Activision are going to do anything about it, but 2023 is, of course, the 20th anniversary of the Call of Duty franchise. And today we're taking a look at one of the black sheep kind of games in the COD franchise, Call of Duty 3. Again, Call of Duty 3 is unique in that it's the only mainline Call of Duty game that doesn't have a PC release. Every other game in the series has had a PC release. The spin-offs haven't, but this is a mainline. This is COD 3. Call of Duty 2 had a PC release, but there's no PC release. So this was released in 2006 for the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, Nintendo Wii, original Xbox, and the PlayStation 2. There was no GameCube version, strangely enough. I guess the Wii version was out. So this was developed by Treyarch, and it was, of course, a cross-gen title running between the two generations. Big difference between the then current-gen versions, the PlayStation 3 version, which ran at a higher resolution, 720p, but it was limited to 30 FPS at the time. Again, the PS3 was a difficult console to develop for. Treyarch didn't have that long to make this, we will say, and it is probably the weakest game in the franchise, certainly the weakest game released so far, mainline game at least, of all the mainline games, the two that were released, the original and the sequel. This does feel like a huge step backwards. Notably, again, the Xbox 360 targeted 60 FPS, and it kind of stuck to it most of the time. And the footage you are looking at is the Xbox 360 version running on an Xbox Series X. So it does stick to that. It is backwards compatible. If you want to play it on a modern system, again, you can play it through the Xbox Series consoles or the Xbox One consoles. Again, so it is fully backwards compatible. There is no enhancements though, so it is the original resolution, which was just below 720p. It was like sub HD resolution, so it is not going to look great, but at least it's going to run fine because it shouldn't pose any challenge to the Xbox One or the Series X console, or the Series console, should we say. But yeah, this one I'm not a big fan of. To me, the campaign feels pretty lackluster, if you ask me. It feels like we're just retreading over old ground. We'd only reached the third mainline game in the series, and already it felt like, we're kind of out of ideas for World War II. At least Call of Duty 4 would at least change all that, by moving the setting at least. And the follow-up to this was Call of Duty World at War, which we'll cover later on as well. And that changed the setting again from the European theatre to the Pacific theatre in Japan, the war against Japan, at least there. And so this one, it does feature more campaigns than the other two games in the series. You get the American campaigns there, the British campaigns there. There's no Soviet campaign. It is replaced with a Polish campaign, and you've also got the Canadian campaign, but it is all set in Europe as well. It's just different characters that you get. It tries to be a bit more cinematic, does this game. This is very much a console shooter, and it does try to go down the road of being more cinematic. You always get a cinematic cutscene at the start of every level, and even if you load up a save midway through that level, you always have to watch the cinematic cutscene as the level loads. It's hiding the loading screen. But it is quite annoying, though. It is kind of an annoying thing to see the same cutscene 4 or 5 times, especially if you come back to it. Gameplay-wise, I don't like the QuickTime events. That's one of the big changes that was added in, was the QTE events, where you had to, you hit the left trigger and the right trigger. You get these like melee events, which just kind of pull you out of the game, really. I want to go and shoot things. You want to shoot enemies. I don't want to be sitting here spamming the L1, R1 buttons, or the left trigger and the right trigger buttons, and then having to end up with another button press again to end the QuickTime event. So it is kind of annoying. The shooting itself isn't very good, to be honest. There's something wrong with it where sometimes you shoot enemies and the shots won't register. I don't know what this is. It feels like a bug in the game, but To me, it feels like, you know, you shoot at enemies and just nothing, they just don't react to being shot. It's like you're firing blanks at them or somehow. And the shooting just doesn't feel right, having come from Call of Duty 2. With all of the guns, they felt quite precise, and it felt like you were firing a gun. This time it kind of just feels like it makes the sound effect of firing the gun. You see the muzzle flash of firing a gun, but, you know, enemies just don't seem to react to being shot. And it takes a few shots for it to register. It is a bit weird, and it's kind of annoying. In terms of the missions, you're just kind of retreading old ground, it feels like. I was doing one of the British missions where you're in France and you're going along the trenches, and you have to disable the 88 guns. And this is just the same as Call of Duty 1. The difference is we're doing it at night this time, but, you know, and we're the British and not the Americans, because that was like the American campaign and like the second level of Call of Duty 1. And to disarm or to plant the C4 on the 88 guns, in COD 1, you just pressed F and that was it. And then you moved away while the timer went off. This one, you go up to you have to prime the C4 yourself, arm the C4, and it's like you have to move the analog stick and then press about 2 or 3 different buttons just to do it. And to me, it really took me out of the game rather than enhance the game. It took me out of it. Just let's press a button, let's get on with it. You're a shooter. And for me, this game, it doesn't look great either. It is a console game. I get that it's a cross-gen game, and yeah, they had to make it for multiple platforms. And COD 1 was only made, you know, just for one platform initially, the PC. But for me, it just looks really bland. It's kind of like this was the era of the brown age of shooters, and this feels like the most brown color, the color palette. It's just so bland, really. And I mean, okay, I get it. Okay, I mean, I've never tried the cross-gen versions, the older gen versions. But I don't know, it just didn't feel great. Again, it doesn't help that it doesn't look great, you know, when you're playing on a 4K screen, and, you know, the resolution is quite low. There's no enhancements on the Xbox Series and Xbox One consoles, like we said. You can play this if you want to play it on the PC, which I won't recommend. You can actually try it out on the PC. It does work on RPCS3. The only problem is you are stuck at 30 FPS. There's nothing you can do about the frame rate. You can up the resolution to 1440p or 4K, and it does run fairly straightforward. If you can run PS3 emulation, it should be okay. But yeah, you're stuck with it at 30 FPS. But yeah, it's interesting that it hasn't really been enhanced on the Xbox consoles. And it's kind of just been forgotten about. You know, they're never going to remake this game. Like the Modern Warfare games got a remake and a remaster. But these games are, you know, this kind of games, it's just kind of forgotten about. And yeah, it's just a forgettable, bland Call of Duty game with, you know, the series was starting to feel stale even in 2006. Luckily, we'll check out the next game in the series, Call of Duty 4, which did revitalize the series, and this was the game that took the series into the kind of popularity that it enjoys today. And we'll take a look at that in the next video, the beginning of, or at least the campaign. Multiplayer wise, I never really bothered with this one. Multiplayer, I just kept playing COD 2 because again, it wasn't on the PC, so I wasn't going to bother with it, and it ran reasonably well, but you know, I preferred Call of Duty 2 on the PC there. It was just, I think most people stuck with COD 2 rather than look at COD 3, so I don't have anything to say about the multiplayer. But anyway, that is all for this video, so thank you for joining me, and we'll see you again soon, and goodbye.